You know the date. 476, the fall of Rome. Barbarians pour through the gates, the last emperor is deposed, the lights go out across Europe, and the Dark Ages begin. It's a good story. It's also almost entirely wrong, and so is the ending you've been told. Rome didn't collapse in a single dramatic year. The real answer is far stranger. Rome didn't die. It changed shape so completely that people stopped recognizing it, and the thing it became is still operating today. Think about what actually happened in 476. A Germanic commander named Odoacer deposed a teenage emperor called Romulus Augustulus. That's it. No sacking of the city, no massacre. Odoacer didn't even claim the title of emperor. He sent the imperial regalia to Constantinople and asked to rule Italy as a representative of the Eastern Emperor, who was still very much in power. Most people living in Italy at the time would not have experienced that year as the end of anything. Tax collectors still collected, Roman law still applied, Latin was still spoken, the Senate continued meeting for decades afterward. So where did the idea of a single catastrophic fall come from? Largely from later historians looking backward and needing a date to point at. But if you look at what was actually happening across those centuries, you find something much more interesting than a collapse. You find a transfer of function. Start with the practical problem. By the 4th and 5th centuries, the Western Roman state was struggling to do the things states do. Historian Peter Heather, who has written extensively on Rome's transformation, has emphasized the compounding pressure of sustained external threats combined with an enormously expensive military and an increasingly strained tax base. When the imperial administration in the West weakened, it didn't leave a vacuum. Something else was already there, already organized, already staffed, and already covering the same territory. The Church. Consider how the Roman Church was structured. It used Roman administrative geography, with bishops based in cities matching existing provincial boundaries. It used Latin, the administrative language of the empire. It had a hierarchy that mirrored imperial organization. It kept written records. It handled disputes. It collected and redistributed resources. It maintained communication networks stretching across the entire Mediterranean world. When imperial officials stopped showing up in a region, the bishop was frequently the only remaining figure with authority, literacy, and an institutional connection to somewhere larger. Historian Peter Brown, whose work reshaped how scholars think about this period, has argued forcefully against seeing these centuries as a simple decline. He describes a period of profound transformation, in which the classical world didn't end so much as reorganize itself around new institutions, with the church absorbing many of the functions that had been imperial. Watch what actually transferred. Roman law didn't vanish. It was preserved, copied, and eventually codified into canon law, the legal system the church still uses. Latin didn't die. It became the language of the church, remaining the language of European scholarship, science, medicine, and diplomacy for over 1,000 years. The title Pontifex Maximus, the chief priest of Roman state religion, held by emperors including Augustus, is a title used by the Pope. The word diocese, describing a church administrative region, was originally a Roman imperial administrative unit. The basilica, a Roman public building for legal and administrative business, became the architectural template for the Christian church. Ask yourself what that pattern actually represents. Not a civilization being destroyed and replaced by something foreign. A civilization's administrative structure being inherited, retitled, and repurposed by an institution that had grown up inside it. Here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. When historians talk about what preserved classical knowledge through the following centuries, the answer is largely monasteries. Monks copying manuscripts by hand in Latin in institutions organized along lines inherited from Roman administration are the reason a substantial portion of classical Greek and Roman literature survived at all. The institution that partly replaced the empire also became the institution that saved the empire's intellectual output. And the eastern half never fell in the first place. Constantinople continued as the capital of a Roman state whose inhabitants called themselves Romans for another 1,000 years after 476 until 1453. We call it the Byzantine Empire, but that name was invented by a German historian in the 16th century. The people living in it would have simply told you they were Roman. So when you put this together, the picture that emerges looks nothing like a light switching off. The Western administration fragmented over centuries while its language, law, records, buildings, hierarchy, and even job titles were transferred into a religious institution that continued operating across the same territory. Meanwhile, the eastern half carried on calling itself Rome for another millennium. Nothing about that resembles a sudden fall. This is the part that should genuinely change how you see it. There is an institution in Rome today, headed by a man holding a Roman priestly title, using Roman law adapted into canon law, conducting business in Latin, organized into dioceses, operating from a basilica. Whatever you believe about it, theologically, structurally, it is one of the most direct surviving continuations of Roman administrative organization on earth. So the next time someone tells you Rome fell in 476, remember what actually happened over those long centuries. Not a civilization ending, a civilization handing over its filing system, its language, its law, and its map to something that was already inside it and quietly continuing under a different name in the same city for another 1500 years and counting.